Do you know that for the first time in the history of Kerala, a case has come to light in which a living creature was used for a murder? The police thought of collecting evidence in such a way that it had probably never been done before. This case was presented in court for the first time, and the judge too was seeing such a case for the first time. In fact, this case was even added to the police training syllabus. Today's story is about a case where the entire state was shaken due to a snake bite. Hello, friends. How are you? Today, we are talking about the Uthra case from Kerala. This story begins in the southern state of Kerala, specifically in the Anchal area of Kollam district. A small family lived there, with Uthra as the daughter of the house, who was married. On April 22nd or 23, 2020, Uthra had come to her parental home from her in-laws' house. The date now is May 7th, 2020. The sun was rising, and people were gradually waking up. Usually, Uthra would wake up early, but on this day, she hadn't. The day before, on May 6th, Uthra's 28-year-old husband, Sooraj, had come to her parental home to meet her. Their daughter's room was on the first floor, and Sooraj was also sleeping in the same room. After some time, Sooraj woke up, came out of the room, and began walking around, as he often did when visiting. Uthra, however, still hadn't come out of her room. She was still asleep. Her mother thought that her daughter had been sleeping for a long time and should wake up now. A little later, her mother went upstairs to wake her. Upon entering the room, she saw Uthra lying on the bed, her mouth slightly open, with her left hand hanging off the side of the bed. Uthra's body had a faint blue hue to it. Her mother immediately called out to Sooraj. She asked him why he hadn't woken Uthra up when he got up. He replied that he didn't know whether she was sleeping or unconscious. He had left the room, thinking she should rest as she was still recovering from a snake bite and didn't want to disturb her. Uthra's condition did not seem like she was merely sleeping. A lot of time had passed, and she usually never slept this long. Her mother tried to wake her, first by calling her name, and then by shaking her lightly. But even then, Uthra did not wake up. Seeing this, her mother panicked and screamed for the rest of the family. Everyone tried to wake Uthra, but she wasn't responding. She was rushed to a nearby hospital, where the doctors declared her dead upon arrival. This shocked the family, as they wondered how she could have died in her sleep. Her body had turned slightly blue. The doctors, experienced in their profession, carefully examined Uthra's hands and feet. What they suspected turned out to be true. There were 2 bite marks on Uthra's left hand, resembling those made by a snake. It was clear that her death was not natural, it was caused by a snake bite. The hospital staff called the police to report the unusual case. The police arrived at the hospital and decided to conduct a post-mortem and toxicology tests on Uthra's body. Her family had no objection to the investigation. The results showed that Uthra's death was caused by neurotoxic venom, commonly found in the spectacled cobra, a snake prevalent in the area. However, further investigation revealed that the snake had not bitten her while she was awake. Uthra had been sedated with sleeping pills, and in large amounts. The case, which initially seemed like an accident, now appeared to be premeditated murder. Back at the house, when the family heard that Uthra had died of a snake bite, they began searching the house for the snake, thinking it might still be hiding somewhere. After searching for a while, they found a cobra in a corner of Uthra's room. They beat the snake to death with sticks and then buried it a short distance from the house. After the investigation was completed, Uthra's body was handed over to the family, who performed her last rites. Uthra's family was devastated by her sudden death, especially since she had a young son who was not even a year old. Her husband, Sooraj, was also in mourning. The police continued their investigation, questioning the family about the events leading up to Uthra's death. They searched Uthra's room thoroughly, but couldn't find any sleeping pills. The family mentioned that around 2 months earlier, on March 2nd, Uthra had also been bitten by a snake, a Russell's viper around 1, and this bite had left her in a critical condition, requiring 3 surgeries on her leg. Thankfully, she had survived. After being discharged from the hospital on April 22nd, she was brought to her parental home for care. But just a few weeks later, she was bitten by a cobra, or perhaps someone deliberately caused the bite. A case of murder was registered at the Anchal police station against an unknown person. Although Uthra had some mental challenges due to a learning disability, her condition had improved significantly. Her family was wealthy. Her mother had retired as a school principal, and her father ran a leather business. This tragic case, involving the use of a snake as a weapon, became a significant turning point in Kerala's legal and investigative history. Due to certain conditions, there were some difficulties in the marriage between 2017 and 2018. Uthra's parents uploaded her full profile on a matrimonial site, including all her qualities and shortcomings. Through this site, they found a match named Sooraj Kumar, who lived in the Adore area of Pathram That. His family consisted of his parents and a sister, and they were an average family. Sooraj worked at a local bank, and though his salary wasn't great, it was decent. Uthra's parents met with Sooraj's parents, and things progressed. Sooraj's family had no issues with Uthra's mental condition, as she was undergoing treatment and was improving. The marriage was arranged in 2018 with the consent of both parties. As part of the dowry, Sooraj received a sedan, rupee 5 lakh in cash, and 768 grams of gold jewelry. The jewelry was stored in a joint locker in Uthra and Sooraj's account. Sooraj's father was also gifted a van. Uthra's parents spared no expense for the wedding, which was a grand affair. After the wedding, Uthra moved to her in-laws' house in the Adore area of Pathakuthi. Everything was going smoothly, and a year later, in 2019, they had a son. Uthra's parents sent rupee 8,000 monthly to Sooraj to cover their daughter's medical expenses and also provided health insurance for Uthra, which had a substantial payout. There was a problem with Sooraj's job at one point, and Uthra's father provided financial support of rupee 10,000. Snakes were commonly found in the area around their home, and news of snake bites was frequent. Sooraj had an interest in snakes and had read about them. He could even control them. In late February 2020, while Uthra was at her in-laws' house, she went to her room on the first floor where she used to sleep. A Russell's viper was slithering inside the room. As soon as Uthra saw the snake, she screamed, "Snake! Snake!" Sooraj, who was on the ground floor, heard her and rushed upstairs, screaming. He controlled the snake with a stick and took it far away from the house, and took releasing it into the bushes. Immediately. Uthra the police were already aware of the incident, but on the night of March 2nd, around 1 a.m., Uthra felt something slithering near her feet. U.S. father said that he immediately and saw the same type of Russell's viper. SJ used to fight with her, it wasn't clear if it was the same snake or another, which worsened her mental condition. In a panic, the snake felt threatened, and U.S. father said that despite giving a lot of money, Sooraj and their 1-year-old son were asleep nearby. Their fight escalated so much the son started crying as Sooraj rushed to take Uthra to the hospital. Sooraj remarked that since Uthra had seen 2 snakes, she might have a snake curse, sarp dosha. The police started investigating, collecting statements from Uthra's parents and others. Uthra's parents were heartbroken and felt the police were working slowly. They approached the superintendent of police SP, urging him to take the case seriously and expressing suspicion of certain individuals. On May 20th, Uthra's father addressed the media, and on May 21st, he informed the SP that he suspected Sooraj and his family of harassing their daughter. Since their son's birth, Sooraj had started behaving strangely, always frustrated and irritable, often fighting with his wife. These issues caused Uthra both physical and mental distress. She shared everything with her parents, who tried to counsel the couple, asking them to adjust for the sake of their child's future. Despite the large amount spent on the wedding and dowry, Sooraj was still not satisfied and even demanded a scooter for his sister. In January 2020, the situation escalated so much that Uthra's brother Vishnu went to her in-laws' house to bring her back. After some time, Sooraj realized his mistake and convinced Uthra to return. Uthra's parents suspected that Sooraj might have brought the snake into the house, as he had knowledge of such creatures and could control them. The police investigation was slow, but by May 24th, they arrested Sooraj for questioning. Sooraj denied all allegations, insisting that he had no enmity toward his wife and that disputes between husband and wife were normal. He had no intention of killing her. For 5 days, Sooraj was interrogated, but he continued to deny everything. The police needed to prove whether the snake had bitten Uthra on its own or if it had been forced to do so. According to Uthra's parents, their daughter's room was on the first floor, where the Cobra was found. They questioned how the snake could have entered the room. The gap under the door was too small for such a large snake, and the windows were airtight due to the air conditioning. Moreover, the bed near the window was where Sooraj was sleeping, while Uthra slept by the wall. Even if the cobra had somehow entered through the window, it would have reached Sooraj first. Why did it bite only Uthra? To understand the snake's behavior, the police consulted experts. Some researchers and forest department officials, along with snake handlers, provided crucial information. They explained that if a snake bites on its own, the distance between the two fang marks is different than if it is forced to bite by someone holding its neck. A 180 centimeters cobra, if it bites naturally, leaves a fang distance of 2 centimeters. If forced, this distance increases to 2.4 centimeters. Meanwhile, a separate team was questioning people, and Uthra's parents remained confident that Sooraj was involved, but there was no direct evidence. The circumstantial evidence collected wasn't enough to prove Sooraj's guilt. Eventually, the police retrieved Sooraj's call records and examined his computer's internet history. They discovered that Sooraj had been researching snakes extensively, particularly the Russell's viper, for the past 4 or 5 months. He had been searching about this species online, but stopped reading about it after the incident. Later, he resumed his research, focusing on the Indian spectacled cobra, the same type of cobra that had bitten Uthra and led to her death. I also stopped reading on Sooraj's phone. I found many numbers, including that of a snake charmer who caught snakes. Sooraj first spoke to him in the early days of January 2020. Before this, there had never been any conversation between them. The theory emerged that Sooraj killed his wife, Uthra, by having her bitten by a snake. This information reached Kerala's DGP, meaning Director General of Police. It was the first time such a case had come before them. A similar case had never occurred in the entire state of Kerala before. The police needed to gather more evidence before taking the case to court. Some samples from Uthra were preserved at the hospital, and the cobra was also preserved. DNA tests were conducted on both to prove that this snake had bitten Uthra. The police began reinvestigating at Uthra's parental home. The snake-catching experts questioned how Sooraj brought the snake and what he had kept it in. The police, along with some experts, searched the house. They found a pile of junk on one side of the house, and among it was a plastic jar with several holes drilled in it. The experts realized that the snake must have been kept in this jar. It was carefully removed, and if the snake had indeed been confined in it, some skin fragments would be present inside. The DNA from the skin inside the jar was also tested. Meanwhile, Uthra's DNA and the DNA from the cobra's fangs matched 100%. The skin fragments found inside the jar matched the snake's DNA, proving that the snake was indeed confined in that jar. Fingerprints were also found on the jar, and matching Sooraj's fingerprint confirmed the connection. Now the circumstantial evidence linked Sooraj to the crime. Based on the theory the police had developed, they attempted to recreate the crime scene to understand how Sooraj might have acted. A dummy was made to match Uthra's height and weight. The snake that bit her was 152 centimeters long, so they looked for a snake of the same length. Experts were called in to handle it, and some pieces of chicken were also used. The timing was also set to the moment when the snake bit Uthra, which was at midnight. The dummy was laid on the bed, and a 152 centimeter cobra was released onto it. The snake crawled on the dummy and then slid off the bed, where it settled in a dark corner of the room. The experts picked up the snake and placed it back on the dummy. It repeatedly crawled down to the floor and settled in the dark. This was done 3 to 4 times, and each time, the snake acted the same way. The police were astonished to see this behavior and learned that this is how snakes typically behave. They don't bite unless they feel threatened. They bite only when they are hungry and are looking for smaller animals to prey on, such as rats. At night, they tend to be a bit sluggish. Then the experts grabbed the snake by the neck and brought it near the chicken. The snake became aggressive and attacked the chicken. This was because it was caught by the neck. Snakes dislike being handled this way. After this, they bite whatever comes in front of them. It was also noted that the distance between the cobra's fangs was 1.7 centimeters when it was 152 centimeters long. If it was bitten after being held by the neck, the distance increases to over 2 centimeters. This was also reflected in Uthra's post-mortem report, which mentioned that the distance between her bite marks was over 2 centimeters. This proved that Sooraj had held the cobra by its neck to make Uthra be bitten. An expert named Vava Suresh investigated both Sooraj's and Uthra's homes. He then informed Uthra's parents that a snake could not have come to the second floor on its own, and suggested that they inform the police, as suspicion was already on Sooraj. Uthra's father spoke with the SP, and after gathering all the information, the police arrested Sooraj, making him the prime suspect. All evidence was presented to him, and seeing all of it, he broke down. On July 12, 2020, he confessed to the murder and other details during a media briefing. The snake charmer, whose number was in his phone, was named Chabu Kabu Suresh Kumar, and he was also arrested by the police. Their story is as follows. Sooraj, S. Kumar, and their family were greedy. The things Uthra's family had given them as dowry were insufficient. Sooraj got a wife who had mental health issues, which he did not like, even though Uthra's family had informed him about her condition before the marriage was finalized. Despite this, Sooraj accepted the proposal because he was set to receive a large dowry. Uthra's family told Sooraj that a house would be built for Uthra in Kollam, and both of them would live close to their home. Sooraj was not burdened with Uthra's medical treatment because her parents sent him 8,000 rupees every month for her care. Sooraj wanted a beautiful, completely healthy wife, but did not take proper care of Uthra or give her medication on time. If he wanted, he could have divorced her and married someone else, but he could not do that because he would have to return all the dowry and money. He then started thinking about how to get rid of Uthra and how to transfer her property to his name. They also had a son, and Sooraj found various methods online. That's when he came across an article about death by snakebite. He realized what he needed to do. After all, there were many snakes in his area, and they caused many deaths. He began searching online for information about which snakes were poisonous and where they could be easily found. During his research, Sooraj came across the Russell's viper. Sooraj researched this snake and gathered information. When the snake charmer Suresh found a Russell's viper, he called Sooraj to inform him. They met at a location, and Suresh sold the snake to Sooraj for about rupee 1, confining it in a plastic jar. One day, a snake met Sooraj. However, the buying and selling of snakes is illegal in India. He put it in his bag and returned home. This incident took place in February 2020, in the last days of the month. Sooraj released the snake in his room. It was morning, and Uthra was doing some work on the ground floor. Sooraj told Uthra that he had forgotten his mobile phone in the room. Uthra went to the first floor to get the phone, and right in front of her, the snake was slithering. As soon as Uthra saw the snake, she screamed and called her husband. The snake charmer had already explained to Sooraj what to do and how to control the snake. Sooraj used a stick to drive the snake away from the house, or so Uthra thought. But Sooraj actually took it behind the house and locked it in a plastic jar, hiding it there. On the morning of March 2nd, Sooraj woke up and left the snake with Uthra, then carefully went to bed. When Uthra felt something strange, she got up, and as soon as the snake sensed danger, it bit her. She screamed even louder. Then her husband woke up. Ideally, he should have rushed her to the hospital, but he delayed, saying he was arranging for a vehicle. Between 2 and 3 o'clock, he called a friend to bring a car, even though they already had 2 cars at home, one a Suzuki sedan and the other a van, which were received as dowry. After delaying, he took his wife to the hospital. The poison had already spread throughout her body, and Uthra's legs had swollen, necessitating 3 surgeries. She remained in the hospital from March 2nd to April 22nd. Her parents knew that their son-in-law wouldn't take good care of their daughter, so they brought her back to their house. While Uthra survived, Sooraj's plan failed. Sooraj called the snake charmer and asked for an even more dangerous snake, one with little chance of survival. They met again, and this time the charmer had a cobra. Sooraj received it in 2020. The charmer didn't know what Sooraj would do with the snake since he was being paid 100,000. This snake was also locked in a plastic jar and brought home. It was the same jar in which the Russell's viper had been brought. Sooraj found this snake just 10 days before the murder. He neither fed nor watered it, so the snake remained hungry and produced more venom to hunt. Since the prey had escaped, the snake wouldn't get food. Then, on May 6th, Sooraj visited his in-laws to meet his wife. The snake was locked inside a jar in his bag, which he left in Uthra's room. After everyone had dinner, they went to sleep. Sooraj prepared fruit juice for Uthra, who was still recovering from the Russell's viper bite. Sooraj had already mixed a lot of sleeping pills into the juice because his last plan had failed, and he didn't want that to happen again. Uthra fell asleep, and their son was sleeping with his grandparents. Sooraj washed the glass that contained the sleeping pills thoroughly so that no one would suspect anything. He then took the snake out and threw it on Uthra. The cobra crawled over her and then went to the ground. Sooraj picked it up again and threw it on Uthra. The cobra crawled back to the ground. For the third time, Sooraj grabbed the snake by its neck, and the snake became angry. Sooraj then brought the snake close to Uthra's left hand, and the snake bit her. Sooraj's plan was that when the snake bit her the last time, no one had suspected anything. This time, he thought no one would either since it would seem like a natural event, allowing him to claim the insurance money. Additionally, he thought he would marry again and find a good wife, then leave from there. Hearing all this, the police were also shocked. How could someone be so cunning? Sooraj had no criminal background either. The police went ahead and created a 1,000-page chart. The trial began in the session court, where about 90 people testified, providing all kinds of information about snakes. All evidence was presented, both technical and circumstantial. It had to be proven that the snake didn't bite Uthra of its own will, but was compelled to do so. The snake charmer, Suresh Kumar, who sold the snakes, became a government witness. Sooraj was charged under IPC sections 302 for murder, 307 for attempted murder, along with sections 308, 201, and 328. In October 2021, the session court sentenced Sooraj to 2 life terms, 17 years in prison, and a fine of 500,000. Initially, he would serve 10 years for section 328, which deals with causing harm with poisonous substances, and 7 years for section 201, which involves destruction of evidence. This totals 17 years. After that, life imprisonment would apply, meaning Sooraj would remain in jail for life. This case was included in the rarest of the rare cases, yet he was not sentenced to death. His defense argued that he was only 28 years old, had no prior criminal record, and should be treated with leniency. Uthra's parents were not satisfied with this decision. They believed that Sooraj should receive the death penalty. On March 2nd, when the Russell's viper bit Uthra, Sooraj had gone to the bank that morning to withdraw all the jewelry, knowing that his wife would die that day. Sooraj's father was accused of stealing the jewelry and destroying evidence. 30 years' worth of gold jewelry was found buried near their house. This was the work of Sooraj's father. Additionally, Sooraj's mother, Renuka, and sister, Surya, were also accused of domestic violence, claiming that they were all harassing Uthra together. Let's conclude the story here. Please leave a comment to let us know what you thought of the video. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel, turning on the bell icon. See you in the next video.